Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel, and today I'm back here with another My Team Career Mode Season 3 video, and it is of course the French GP weekend. But before we get our teeth stuck into that, click off the video now if you haven't watched the last video in the series and you want to watch that, because we are going to head over there to the standings, have a little recap of what happened at the Spanish Grand Prix, because we finished P4 with the fastest lap after fighting our way from the back of the grid. Of course, we stacked grid penalties, but we aren't in a great position despite that solid result from the back of the grid. We have just 38 points so far in the championship, significantly less than my teammate Charles Leclerc, who once again took another victory last time out, making it 2 wins and a P2 this season. He has 69 points. We're going to really struggle to claw that gap in. P2 last time out, though, was George Russell. A fantastic drive from him in the Ferrari, taking now 25 points in total from this season, but of course executed that one-stop strategy to perfection. P3 was Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, and he just managed to hang on to that P3 in the dying moments of the race as we tried to get a podium for ourselves. He's on 45 points after that result. Not too worried about him being in front of us in the championship. I'm sure we'll be able to catch up to him later in the season. It was a solid result for Checo Perez in P5, but didn't really have the pace of his teammate. P6 with Lando Norris's teammate. P9 McLaren with some solid results. Meanwhile, Mercedes continue their resurgence. P7 for Hamilton and P8 for Bottas. Not really, though, what they were looking for. Gasly continued his point-scoring run with a P10. In terms of the constructors, we are looking comfortable at the top ahead of Red Bull. P3 battle is Ferrari versus McLaren, AlphaTauri and Mercedes. Ferrari 1 point ahead of McLaren, AlphaTauri just 4 behind them. Mercedes 6 behind, very close in that battle. Alpine have 2 points down there in 7th. But of course now we can't work our way through the R&D before this GP weekend. We have got an aero upgrade coming in, and I don't really want to go for another minor upgrade. But of course we can go for an ultimate energy recovery system rotors upgrade. I think we'll go for that, and maybe also once we've got some more R&D, want to have a little look at getting another durability upgrade in, of course, to try and prevent any future mechanical failures, or at least make them less likely. Quite a bit of money left in the bank at the moment. Having a little look at what you can go for. Don't really think we should go for a chassis upgrade, although it's quite enticing because we do already have a lot of the chassis department, in a sense, sorted out in terms of the upgrades. We're going to go for an air upgrade there. We've got that in the bag. An R&D one, that'll get us some more R&D, and I think we're going to go with a claim there for my teammate, because of course that is then going to slowly work its way back into the team, and then we'll be able to get another sponsor on board, which is going to allow us then, of course, to go and get more bonuses after the race and more income, which then constantly boosts the team. It's all sort of a reoccurring circle, because you're boosting into the team and then that helps you later in the future. But got some R&D now, and we are going to go for another reliability upgrade. I'm not really sure about the energy store one. There is the gearbox reliability testing or the ICE. I think we're going to go for the ICE reliability testing there. That'll be in for the French Grand Prix, providing there are no issues. We're going to skip past that press interview. There's no real point covering that. It's just Will Buxton constantly contradicting himself, and sadly we're going to have to lose 1,000 team acclaim because we can't go for the other option because we don't have the resources. So bit of a frustration there. Upgrades are in terms of the departments, and we got some more R&D points. And before we head into the season break, we're going to have a look at what we could do with those R&D points. Of course, I think we're going to go with a calipers upgrade, a minor upgrade, but that would leave us with just one more upgrade to complete the chassis department. And now moving past the season break, we've got a durability event there. I think we're going to accept that. Of course, increasing the morale, always helpful, especially when we're pushing on a bit with the reliability this season, and that is very frustrating. The rotors upgrade has failed, and that will not be in for the French Grand Prix. We're just going to need to hope that we can get some more R&D in quick enough so that we can get that secured. And yes, we can get that secured for the Austrian GP. Let's just check. Yes. So we will have that in for the Austrian GP. Really frustrating, though, for us there. It could have been in for this weekend. I do think those upgrades have been successful. Sadly, we can't increase the racecraft of my teammate at the same time. That's quite a good thing. It's already maxed out. So that's a pretty pointless department event there. Sort of just saying that, you know, this is a wasted department event because there's nothing we can do with that one there. But continuing along, got some more R&D. 900 per week in this career mode. So that's really, really boosting us. Forgot to add in more of those activities, but we've got that sorted now. Of course, it's with the season break. It confuses you a little bit. And there is the major gearbox upgrade, and we're going to go for that one. The reliability testing upgrade for the gearbox. That should be in for the British Grand Prix. And the calipers upgrade also in too. And you can see we've got a comfortable lead in the R&D. We're going to have a look at the R&D graph in a minute. In terms of what we need to change, I think we need potentially a new CE for this weekend. Be a bit risky to continue with a 64% wear one. So we are going to go with a fresh CE for this weekend. Everything else is under 50%, so I'm not too worried about all of that for this weekend. And now I have done free practice. We've got some more R&D in the bank and of course some development boosts. However, it looks like it will rain a little bit in qualifying. It should be raining, 75% chance, sort of end of Q2 into the start of Q3. However, it's quite unpredictable. The race, however, is set to be dry, which should be some good news for us because it's certainly a track that we excel at in the dry compared to the other tracks on the calendar. In terms of the rivalry though, against Max Verstappen, after last time out, we are 2 points behind in that one. Hopefully, we can retake the lead in that one this race weekend. With that extra R&D in the bag, there's only actually 3 more aero upgrades left to do. 1 more chassis upgrade, and I don't really want to go for that one just yet. And after we've got the rotors in, 2 more fuel efficiency upgrade to complete the powertrain department. Having a little look at what we could go for. That's an opportunity for some more reliability upgrades. We really are pushing on those. And actually, the MG UK upgrade, we can get that in for the British Grand Prix. That's what we're going to go for there. And that was quite reduced. Having a little look then, 3 upgrades heading in pretty soon. But of course, what we're looking at is the R&D graph. We maintain our comfortable lead over Mercedes and Red Bull. Red Bull and Mercedes very, very close together. And a little bit of a gap back to Ferrari and McLaren. That bunch, though, that is going to be very interesting to watch. Very close between those this weekend. Then the gap to the midfield slightly increasing. Alpine a little bit further ahead of Aston Martin. Then a short gap back to Williams, who are really striding forward. They're now ahead of Alfa Romeo. And AlphaTauri now the second worst team. They're only ahead of Haas, who stay at the back. Can AlphaTauri combat that and still get some good results this weekend? And then, of course, interesting Red Bull-Mercedes battle. How will that result? Can't wait to see all that. But, of course, now it is time to move into qualifying. Welcome to Q1 here, and our first lap in this session. We are out quite early, of course, with the threat of rain at some point in qualifying. You always want to be getting out at the start of the sessions and getting a solid lap in, but so far, Sector 1 has been pretty neat, to say the least. Really do quite click with the first couple of sectors as I run a bit wide there. As you can see, a purple Sector 1, a little bit of oversteer there, but still, we are going pretty nicely, and as we head towards Sector 3 and into Sector 3. We went purple in Sector 2. This is quite a cracker of a lap, to say the least. But now, Nicholas Latifi is in the way in the Williams, and this could really, really jeopardise our lap here, and he's not going to move out the way. Surely, Latifi, come on, just let us through here. That's not going to happen, and in desperation, we're going way too wide there and locking up. That's really costly, and we remain behind him. The current fastest lap held by Lando Norris, but we should be able to top the timing charts. But Sector 3 really hampered for ourselves there at 28.097, and that is enough to put us P2 with my teammate Charles Leclerc quickest in Q1. Still, though, for ourselves, plenty of time to be found. Of course, in that final sector where we got held up, then we got Verstappen, Norris, Russell and Daniel Ricciardo, P6, 4/10 off his teammate. Solid work from Russell to be up there in P5, ahead of one of the two McLarens, and come to ahead of his teammate Carlos Sainz, who's down there in P8. Hamilton is P7 and Bottas P9. Mercedes continue to struggle ahead of Alonso and Perez. Perez down there in P11, 7/10 slower than Bottas. I think he must have got caught up in some traffic, but great work from Fernando to take P10 in that Alpine. He'll want to repeat that again in Q2, and I wouldn't be surprised if he managed to do that in that fantastic looking Alpine. His teammate only P13, bit disappointing for him there, beaten by Pierre Gasly, his fellow countryman, who is of course in the AlphaTauri. Fantastic work to be ahead of Ocon there in much slower machinery. Just Gasly once again outperforming that AlphaTauri, and similarly so for his teammate, who also makes out of Q1 in P14. That is of course Lance Stroll. Then the two Japanese drivers on the grid, Matsushita ahead of Yuki Tsunoda, continuing his great form for Matsushita, and Tsunoda of course starting really to get comfortable with that Alfa Romeo and starting to get some decent results out of it of course in qualifying. We also want to see that though from him in the races. Then of course now knocked out of Q1, Nicholas Latifi, but P17, a fantastic lap from the Canadian to be P17 in that Williams. Of course, the Williams looking stronger this weekend, and he is really using that to get a fantastic P17 on the grid for the race. Great work from him, missing out on Q2 by just under a tenth. Then Robert Schwartzman, P18 in the Aston Martin. Bit disappointing to be 4/10 slower than his teammate and knocked out in Q1. Couldn't really find a pace in that Aston Martin. He'll have to fight back in the race. But Mick Schumacher taking a solid quality result there in that very slow Haas, to say the least. P19 for him, better than P20 or 21. P20, of course, Guan Yu Zhou continuing his poor run of form. He's not clicking with that Alfa Romeo, 7/10 behind his teammate, and another disappointing result for him. Nikita Mazepin, though, finally not last in a qualifying session. P21, pretty solid not to be last, but still way behind his teammate. Pretty disappointing there, nearly a whole second behind. The last man in Q1, though, is Antonio Giovinazzi. Real shame for him, and I think he must have got held up or really messed up on that lap and then couldn't have gone out again for a better lap because of the rain. Real shame, because he could have been potentially in Q2, or at least where his teammate is, in what is a much improved Williams for this weekend. Real shame, though, for Antonio. But now we head into Q2, and it was raining at the end of Q1, and it is raining at the start of Q2. It is very treacherous out here at the moment, yet there is still quite a decent amount of grip. It's certainly going to be easy to end up with your car pointing in the wrong direction, and you've got to be quite careful around the lap. But overall, we're not doing too badly. Usually on my first lap in wet conditions, I just absolutely mess up entirely. But a purple Sector 1, and as we now head into Sector 3, it's a pretty decent lap from myself here. I wasn't expecting this, and actually it's not as slippery as I would have been expecting. Of course, France, it's not too bad in the wet. Similarly with Austria, and I'm actually quite happy with the lap we managed to put in here. The question is, though, will it dry up enough by the end of the session to be able to get onto the slick tyres? Either way, Carlos Sainz sets the quickest lap, a 1 minute 40 for him. Lando Norris is going to cross the line. Is he going to go quickest? Yes, he does. Are we going to top that? Yes, we are. A 39.5 as an early contact with George Russell in the Ferrari, and that they're putting us P5 isn't going to matter, because now, as you can see, it is time for the slick tyres much quicker to be on the soft compound of tyres, and we are going to jump right out onto the track. Still a little bit damp at the moment, but we are going to use our soft tyres and hopefully put in a decent lap. A little bit messy at the start, and we can't afford too many mistakes because we have gone out a little bit later than I usually would do, and that means we've only got one lap. So plenty of work for us to do. Saying that, Perez is on the intermediate, so I'm sure he's not on those inters, because it's certainly not intermediate conditions. Either way, Sector 1's been a little bit messy, nearly running a bit wide there in Sector 2. As we head into Sector 3, we're starting to gain a bit of time. Perez, I think, yeah, he's crossed the line, and he's only P9. That's a bit worrying for him. Now P10, I think he's crossed the line. Or he hadn't crossed the line. Either way, Bottas behind us, he needs to improve. Norris needs to improve. Gasly and Stroll are out of qualifying. They're going to be at the bottom. Stroll is out of qualifying. I think what we've done is going to be enough. Matsushita is out of qualifying in P12. I wonder who he's going to be, P11. But we are going to cross the line. And that is enough to get us through in P7. Certainly not the best of laps from myself, but we are through. One man who's certainly through is my teammate, Charles Leclerc. P1 for him, a best lap of 1 minute 29.5. Next, though, is Lando Norris and then Valtteri Bottas. Great laps from those two. And, of course, you've got Sainz and Russell in the Ferraris. Solid work from those two. Russell behind Sainz. We haven't seen that too much this season, actually. Then, Max Verstappen in P6. A little bit of a disappointment for him, ahead of myself. Then, Lewis Hamilton making it through down there in P8. Ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. P9. Quite a bit behind his teammate, but through into Q2 is Fernando Alonso. Fantastic work from him. What a lap to make it through. And that, of course, means that Sergio Perez is out in Q2. I said that he'd finished his lap and he was already out, but he'd done it, finished his lap, and then it wasn't enough. Knocked out by a whole tenth to a much slower Alpine. Perez is out in Q2 with an awful lot of work to do when it comes to the race. Disaster for the Mexican there. I just can't really believe that. Wasn't expecting him to be out in Q2 at all. Also out in Q2, though, Esteban Ocon, but P12, still very solid for him. Pretty close to his teammate's lap time of a 31.3. Also out, though, is Nobuharu Matsushita in P13. Still a very solid quality result for him, continuing his good run of form. And, of course, he is once again in front of his fellow countryman, Yuki Tsunoda, in that Alfa Romeo, continuing to find some great pace. And P14 is a very solid result here in Q2. Then, if we have a little look further down the order, of course, the Alfa Romeo is quicker than the AlphaTauri, so you'd expect Tsunoda to be in front of the AlphaTauris. He's only in front by 1,000th there, but my old teammate is ahead of Lance Stroll in the AlphaTauri, and then Pierre Gasly in his AlphaTauri. Those two clearly struggling in that pretty dismal car this weekend, not getting a great result for both of them, starting P15 and P16. A lot of work to do in the race if they want a decent result. But of course, now, without the AlphaTauris, Yuki Tsunoda, Matsushita, Ocon, and more importantly, Sergio Perez, we are going to be heading into Q3. And really, the big shock into this one is Sergio Perez. I mean, I thought he was out, but then I realised that he hadn't actually finished his lap, and it still wasn't enough for the Mexican. We're into Q3. We've got 2 sets of softs left to use, so we are currently using one of them, and a big lockup there. That's going to prove a little bit costly with our Sector 1 time. Still purple and we should hopefully be able to compete with Charles Leclerc in this qualifying session. The final part of quali, of course, this decides the grid for the top 10 drivers. Russell, a 28.3, solid lap from him there. We are going to be trying to beat my teammate, though. That's going to be quite difficult into the final couple of corners. Now, the final corner, a big lock up there, nearly going over the sausage curls. In fact, we go over the first couple of them. DRS open, and it hasn't been the best of laps, to say that it's been a 28.111. It's okay. It's okay. Certainly can do a lot better. 7/10 behind my teammate. A lot of work to do there. Yeah, we are going to need a lot of time saving, I guess you would say. We have got quite a lot of work to do, to say the least, if we are going to beat him in this quality session, and that's not the way to start your lap off there. Already losing the rear a little bit. I felt like we were just struggling through the first couple of corners. That proved costly. Another big lock up there. Despite that, we do manage to take a purple sector 1 and a big slide. We're lucky to still be in the right direction. We held that, but now that's pretty much this lap gone, and I pretty much abandoned it, and it's all going to come down to the last lap, and I really am thinking we can't gain that amount of time. There was 7/10 on Charles. I think we are probably going to have to just aim to keep this P2 from potentially charging Mercedes and Red Bull drivers, and of course the Ferraris and the McLarens behind. Starting off the lap, first couple of corners complete, and not too messy there. Of course, the curb at turn 2 often sends you sliding out, but another lockup once again. Seems quite religious now, religiously doing that every lap. But of course, purple sector 1, not losing the car there. That's quite helpful. And that, of course, now gives a bit of a boost down the straight, because we aren't losing time from a prior little bit of a, I suppose, loss of grip is the correct way to put that. But now we are continuing through sector 2. The place where we lost the time on our first lap was sector 3. So with a purple sector 1 and a green sector 2 as Hamilton goes P3, we really need to improve in this final sector. Sainz P4, Ricciardo P5. We've still got a Red Bull and a Merc to go. My teammate currently in pole position, a 27.3 on the board for him. We are much improving through the final sector here. And now Max Verstappen crossed the line. It's P2. We're going to have to improve. And Valtteri Bottas goes P3. We are, though, 3/10 quicker. We've only got to beat a 28.0. And that is going to be enough for P2 in Q3. They're only 3/10 behind my teammate Charles Leclerc, who takes pole once again. Really, we just could not find the pace to match him at all there. But an absolutely fantastic drive in qualifying from my teammate to take that pole position once again. A 27.384, his best lap. We were, of course, P2. I can't really have hoped for too much more. We can attack from there in the race and hopefully battle Charles for the win. We really, though, just could not match him. He is just so quick in qualifying. The race, though, is where we can start to battle against him. Max Verstappen only 3/10 behind us. A really solid quali drive from him to take P3 there in his Red Bull. Disaster for his teammate, but a solid result to start on the front 2 rows. He will be joined on the second row by Bottas, who is ahead of his Mercedes teammate Lewis Hamilton. Bottas, of course, P4. Hamilton, P5, something we've seen a lot in Season 1, then a bit less in Season 2 and Season 3. Then, of course, P6 goes to Carlos Sainz. Best of the rest battle is led by him in the Ferrari, only just off the back of Lewis Hamilton. So a solid lap from the Spaniard, of course, finishing ahead of both McLarens. Ricciardo ahead of Norris. We haven't seen that too many times either. Great to see Ricciardo finally getting some decent quali results. Norris, P8. He'll work from there in the race ahead of George Russell, his fellow countryman, in P9. Bit disappointing compared to his teammate, but a solid starting position for him. And then, of course, in P10 below him, as you'd expect, of course, great to see him through into Q3. That is, of course, Fernando Alonso. I wouldn't have expected too much more, though.
Hello and welcome to the Circuit Paul Ricard, current home of the French Grand Prix, an event dating all the way back to 1906. It's been held at many venues over the years, with famous moments from Dijon and Manicourt the feature of many a highlights reel. And let's hope we see more of those in the race today. The Circuit Paul Ricard then, a 3.6 mile track, 25 miles east of Marseille. 15 corners here, 6 to the left and 9 to the right, with the main overtaking chance expected going into turn 8. Top speeds today should be around 205 miles per hour. And as always, a man with plenty of racing experience joins me in the commentary box. Today it's Anthony Davidson. Tell me, Ant, you're no stranger to surviving the melee of turn 1. So how do you keep out of trouble when there's so much going on around you?
There are 3 main things to worry about there, Crofty: positioning, awareness and discipline. First, you have to put your car in a bit of space and make sure you have room to react to what the others are doing. Then you have to watch your mirrors and listen to the sounds around you to get a sense of where everyone is. And finally, just don't get too greedy. Just because a gap exists doesn't always mean you should go for it.
It's time to take a look at our starting grid for today's race. Charles Leclerc lines up on pole position and the owner driver alongside. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Verstappen, Bottas, Lewis Hamilton and Sainz, Ricciardo, Norris, Russell and Fernando Alonso, Perez, Ocon, Yuki Tsunoda and Stroll, Gasly, Latifi, Robert Schwartzman and Mick Schumacher, Joe, Mazepin, Giovinazzi and Nobuharu Matsushita. And now it's time to head down to the track.
Heading into this one then, there is just one grid penalty, and that is, of course, for Nobuharu Matsushita, who drops to the back of the grid after what was a very solid quality result for him. Bit of a shame there. But in terms of strategy for the Grand Prix, we have to start on the soft compound tyres that were used in Q2. We are then going to go on to the mediums, and then either take them to the end of the Grand Prix, or we will go for an extra pit stop onto the mediums if we are really struggling, or the softs if we want to maybe bank the fastest lap. However, that will come down to the race situation. And here we go then for the French Grand Prix in Season 3. 5 red lights. They're out and away we go. The initial launch, pretty mediocre for ourselves. The Mercedes really slow off the start behind. We're alongside with Max Verstappen as we head down into turn 1. Quite late on the brakes, we managed to fend him off and keep the P2. Meanwhile, further back, the McLarens are fighting. Daniel Ricciardo versus Lando Norris. Lando Norris down the inside line of his teammate, now round the outside line. He's got the inside line for the next corner, and that is pretty much the move done. Meanwhile, further in front, Hamilton ahead of his teammate, Valtteri Bottas. A lovely battle between those two. Alonso still in P10 in front of Sergio Perez, who didn't have a fantastic start, to say the least. Meanwhile, if you look, it's the two Mercs fighting once again. Bottas versus Hamilton, and Bottas regains P4 round the outside line into the braking zone at the chicane. Fantastic racing already on lap number 21 out of 27. Of course, Alonso still rounding out the top 10. We got Perez, P11, Gasly, Ocon, Tsunoda, Stroll, Latifi, Schwartzman. And then we got the Haas of Mazepin, really great start for him, ahead of Mick Schumacher, Guan Yu Zhou, Antonio Giovinazzi and Matsushita, who is still yet to make any progress in this Grand Prix in P22. On to lap number 2, and we are really just trying to stay within that 1 second mark of my teammate for when DRS is enabled. And we're doing a bit more than that, we're actually getting quite close to him. Of course, a purple sector on this lap. The gap to Verstappen behind is increasing slowly. So is the gap back to the Mercs. So pretty comfortable so far in this Grand Prix. And now, as we head towards the end of lap number 2, nearly heading on to lap number 3, we will be able to use DRS down the back straight on the next lap, which should give us a bit of a boost into the chicane and potentially an overtaking opportunity as we take the fastest lap of 1 minute 30.693, and DRS, of course, is enabled. And that is certainly going to give us a boost down the back straight, and now we are going to use that boost down the back straight. ERS is also being used at the same time. Got the DRS open into the braking zone, and Leclerc braking really, really late and cuts around the outside line of us. We nearly have a contact and lose our front wing to his rear wheel, but it's still a decent exit for us. Now we're going to try and send it down the inside line into the right-hander, and we're going to try and brave it out, and we get the move done, and that's ourselves up into the lead of the Grand Prix. What a battle that was between me and my teammate. Could we have a similar situation at the start of this one to the Bahrain Grand Prix? Looking further down the order though, Yuki Tsunoda is P14 with Lance Stroll behind in P15. Alfa Romeo versus AlphaTauri. Stroll down the inside line into turn 1, but nearly contact as Yuki Tsunoda aggressively defending and keeps the position. Fantastic to watch. Schumacher versus Mazepin further back as Schumacher comes through into P18 ahead of Nikita, who sits there in P19, nearly losing out to Guan Yu Zhou, but he is safe at the moment. Myself, of course, leading the Grand Prix, still ahead of Leclerc, Verstappen, and it's Bottas versus Hamilton once again. Hamilton round the outside line into the chicane, gets the move done. Now Perez versus Alonso for 10th. Perez gets the move done and takes P10. Great move there in the Red Bull. Back into the points for him on that one-stop strategy. Meanwhile, we are still going pretty strong here. Lap number 5 as well. We are forced to lift off there to even somewhat make the corner, and now Charles Leclerc has DRS on us and he's absolutely charging at us, and once again braking quite late, and we nearly collide. He comes through into P1, but a pretty poor exit from him. The kart standing around a bit for him, but not certainly for us, as we can now send it down the inside line, brave it out, and that is the move complete. Nearly thinks about trying to send it down the inside line into the next corner, but move done for ourselves, and now he's really been on the back of us for the whole of the final sector, and we get really messy over that curve there at the second to last corner, and he comes through into P1 and takes DRS. We are using a ERS though to combat that, but still he takes P1 in this race. Meanwhile, Fernando Alonso is in to get rid of those soft tyres, and the mediums are on for him, the first of those to pit on the two-stop strategy. Wonder where he will filter out, but of course back to ourselves now down the back straight. We want to try and retake P1 from Charles round the outside line. We're going to go, and that's finally a move complete at the chicane. We don't need to take it all the way up the hill, and we are back into the lead of the Grand Prix. Meanwhile, Nikita Mazepin lost out, of course, to Mick Schumacher, and now he's going to lose out to Antonio Giovinazzi, who comes through round the outside line, continuing to make progress now into P19 after a disappointing qualifying. Meanwhile, my teammate Charles Leclerc is into the pits. He is set to be joined by one of the Mercs and Max Verstappen too in the Red Bull. Hamilton is in out of the two Mercedes drivers. Who else are we going to see into the pits? Lando Norris continuing along, George Russell continuing along, and Max Verstappen, I think, forced to wait there, held up a bit. My teammate is getting his pit stop sorted. He's out the pit box pretty comfortably, and Lewis Hamilton is in front of Max Verstappen. He's jumped him in the pit stops. Was my teammate going to filter out as we got Yuki Tsunoda versus Lance Stroll? Stroll down the inside line of Yuki Tsunoda. But now Tsunoda's going to fight back, and he keeps the position. Further behind those two, we have got Hamilton and Verstappen, P13 and P14. Then Mick Schumacher is holding up Carlos Sainz in his Ferrari. Zhou versus Ricciardo, and Ricciardo comes through down the inside line. And now Sainz versus Schumacher. This could be an interesting battle, but of course looking further back, Matsushita, Alonso and Nikita Mazepin. Matsushita comes through, then it's Mazepin. Alonso not gaining anything from that down there in P22, sticks it down the inside line on the exit of that section, and he's going to now send the battle all the way up the hill. Sainz and Ricciardo both now past Mick Schumacher. Schumacher's teammate Mazepin defending down the inside line of Fernando Alonso. Alonso braving it round the outside line, and he's going to get the move done. What a fantastic battle. Meanwhile, Sergio Perez staying out on his one-stop strategy. So are we. We, though, are probably going to go for the two-stop strategy. Norris has pitted, so has George Russell and Valtteri Bottas. These guys are going to exit the pit. There goes my teammate. Now then, who is going to come through? Tsunoda comes through, Stroll comes through, Latifi comes through, Hamilton and Verstappen both come through. Now further back, we have got nearly a collision there between Sainz and Norris. Wow. That was a little bit close on the pit exit. But now, Hamilton versus Robert Schwartzman. The action continues down the back straight. Hamilton is going to try round the outside line into the braking zone at the chicane, and he gets the move done. Fantastic work from him, and now he's going to chase onto Nicholas Latifi as we head on to lap number 9 here. The Williams is going to try and defend round the inside line, but Hamilton with the inside line then for the next corner gets the move done into P8 for him. Looking further up the order though, Esteban Ocon versus my teammate Charles Leclerc. He's finally caught up to this duo down the inside line now as we head into the chicane section. But Alonso defending really, really well. My teammate still with somewhat of an overlap. And as those two fight, we are now going to bring it into the pits. We've stayed out a bit longer. We've struggled a little bit with tyre wear, but we've sort of stayed out a bit longer to allow potentially a one-stop strategy if necessary. And of course, when we pit, we should be right with my teammate, Ocon and Gasly. So we're going to be able to fight those guys, but have pretty much probably what I would say about a 10th a lap advantage, of course, from having fresher medium tyres. But we are into the pit box. A nice clean stop would be rather helpful. Perez goes through and takes P1. The mediums are on, but I think we're going to end up out behind Gasly and Ocon as Gasly comes speeding through. Then it's Esteban Ocon, and we nearly collide with my teammate on the pit exit, side by side into turn 1, and we are going to be ahead of him after pitting a few laps later. Now we're going to have to chase onto Ocon and Gasly, and later in the lap that's what we're doing, but Ocon is closing the door a little bit on us, but he managed just to sneak through down the inside line. My teammate jumps Ocon too. We're side by side with him, and we get the move done. So it's Gasly P2, myself P3, Leclerc P4, and Ocon P5. This is such a scintillating Grand Prix to watch. Battles across the field. It's absolutely incredible. And now, towards the end of lap number 10, on to lap number 11, we are about to head. We are chasing down the AlphaTauri of Pierre Gasly. We're going to have a look round the outside line. We don't even need to battle into the first corner. Moved on with DRS, and we are up to P2. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen versus Lance Stroll. Verstappen down the inside line of the AlphaTauri, comfortably done there. Looking further back, Valtteri Bottas right on the back of Robert Schwartzman. Is he going to try the outside line? Yes, he is. Now he's got the inside line. Bit of contact there. Hopefully, no damage for their sake, but Valtteri Bottas up the order there. And now my teammate versus Pierre Gasly down the inside line before we even reach the braking zone. Comfortably done for Charles and takes that P3 position. Looking a bit further back, though, we've got Yuki Tsunoda versus Valtteri Bottas. Actually, that's Bottas versus Latifi there, sorry. Bottas comes past Latifi. Then absolutely kerfuffle of cars back there. Norris gets ahead of Carlos Sainz. And then it is Ricciardo behind Sainz. He's going to be having a little look at trying to come through there. We could see a bit of a battle up the hill. We won't see that, though. Fantastic battling in this Grand Prix, and that is continuing with Valtteri Bottas versus Yuki Tsunoda. Bottas round the outside line of the Alfa Romeo, moved on into turn 1. P9 now for him. Further down the field, we've got Antonio Giovinazzi versus Guan Yu Zhou. Giovinazzi, can he stick it around the outside line at turn 1, inside line at turn 2, and he gets that move done. Norris now versus Schwartzman as Norris gets past the Aston Martin. Sainz will be hoping to get past the Aston Martin now as we head onto the next DRS zone of the lap. Sainz with DRS now. He is going to be chasing onto Schwartzman, but before that, Norris versus the Williams of Latifi round the outside line, gets the move done, and now Schwartzman staying ahead, and Ricciardo coming past Carlos Sainz. Disaster strikes pretty much for Ferrari here, because they're down to P15 and P16. Sainz are going to try and protest it round the outside line, sticks it round the outside line, but he's going to have to deal with Sainz. Yeah, he's going to have to deal with him going down. into P15. Now, Perez into the pits on his one-stop strategy. He's going to be joined by Esteban Ocon. Question is, though, where is Perez going to filter out in this Grand Prix? Gasly opting to stay out one more lap. Clearly happy with his medium tyres. Hamilton comes through. Verstappen comes through. Is Perez going to be out in front of Valtteri Bottas? Is going to be quite close, but Perez is going to come out ahead. Now looking further down the order, we've got Carlos Sainz and George Russell both chasing down Ricciardo, and now Guan Yu Zhou. Mick Schumacher's in front. Oh, very close between Alonso and Ocon, who exits the pits. Lance Stroll about to exit the pits. He's had his pit stop, so has Tsunoda. Giovinazzi has too. Matsushita has, and Mazepin has just been serviced to continue on in this Grand Prix. Meanwhile, Alonso getting past Guan Yu Zhou there. His teammate Ocon will want to follow through too. And of course, battles all across the field, and I think we could be about to see some more pit stops towards the end of this lap, because of course Pierre Gasly hasn't pitted yet, and he is coming into the pits for his mandatory stop onto the hard compound tyres. Who is he going to be joined by? Latifi, of course, still yet to pit off his mediums. Similarly for Robert Schwartzman, but Gasly will want a nice, neat stop in his AlphaTauri. And the hard compound tyres are on, and he's out of his pit box. Meanwhile, Carlos Sainz is chasing down Daniel Ricciardo into turn one, but he's not going to get close enough this lap. Robert Schwartzman is being serviced, getting some fresh tyres. Fernando Alonso down the main straight. So is Esteban Ocon, and Pierre Gasly slots in between the Alpine cars. And now it is Latifi is going to come out ahead of Schwartzman, but they're going to be behind Yuki Tsunoda, who moves up to P15. Mick Schumacher is going to exit the pits now. Is he going to be ahead of Antonio Giovinazzi? Yes, he is. Is the Alfa Romeo going to be ahead of Matsushita? Guan Yu Zhou just about is, and we nearly have contact there. The pit exit has proved quite treacherous today. We nearly had a few incidents, but we are going quickest there, a 33, 1 minute 33.85, our best lap, and really we are just ploughing along on the medium, slowly extending the gap back to Charles Leclerc. And really the plan in this Grand Prix just to reserve the tyres and keep going. We're pretty much happy in this French Grand Prix. Fernando Alonso, though, not happy with those medium tyres. The first of the drivers to come in and complete his second stop in the Grand Prix. He was the first to come in at the start of the Grand Prix for his fresh set of mediums, and first to come in of the two stoppers for his second stop. The hard compound tyres are on. Yuki is going to go through. Nicholas is going to go through. Robert's going to go through. Don't know why I'm calling everyone by their first name, but is Alonso going to get out ahead of Schumacher? Yes, he is. P17 for Fernando, and a lot of work to do now for him to try and make it back up the order towards his teammate and Pierre Gasly. Guan Yu Zhou is going to come past a very slow Alfa. The Alfa's coming past a very slow Aston Martin. Matsushita, I think, has got a mechanical issue. Yep, a mechanical failure. He pulls over, and that's a DNF for Nobuharu. What a shame there. Bit of a Grand Prix to forget after starting from the back of the grid. Now, Charles Leclerc stays out. Max Verstappen is coming in to the pits for his fresh set of tyres. He is joined by Lewis Hamilton, who jumped him last time in the pit stops. Will we see that again? Hamilton into his pit box, Verstappen into his pit box. That was almost synchronised. Verstappen, fresh medium tyres are on, and he is out in front of Lewis Hamilton. Ricciardo is coming in with Carlos Sainz. Will we potentially see a slow stop from one of these? That would potentially trigger a bit of a change in between them, but McLaren very neat with their pit stop there, and Ricciardo is in front of Carlos Sainz. Great stops from them. Lewis Hamilton comes out behind Pierre Gasly. Verstappen, though, in front of Pierre Gasly. That is quite pivotal there. Then Ocon is P10. Looking further down the order. Oh! Very close. Ricciardo being released out of his pit box, nearly colliding into Stroll. Carlos Sainz just behind those two in P13. But now Ricciardo He's going to chase Lance Stroll, and he's going to fight him. Pushes him out a little bit there as we head through this lovely complex section. Gets the move done. Now, Lance Stroll vulnerable to Carlos Sainz. Meanwhile, in front, Hamilton now in front of Pierre Gasly. The action just doesn't stop in this Grand Prix. My teammate is into the pits. So is Valtteri Bottas. Perez is continuing along. He's already done his mandatory pit stop in this race and certainly shouldn't need another one. Bottas out of his pit box as George Russell enters the pits. I do believe it is. Lando Norris has completed his pit stop. Norris hasn't even got a fresh set of tyres on yet in the pit lane. Hamilton comes through. Verstappen comes through. Gasly comes through. Ocon comes through. Bottas is going to be behind all of those drivers. He exits the pits. Then it's Lando Norris. George Russell, is he going to be out in front or behind Ricciardo? Behind Ricciardo. And then the battle behind as Russell is ahead of Sainz. Sainz is ahead of Lance Stroll down the inside line. Great move there from the Spaniard on the Canadian. Now, of course, we've got Yuki Tsunoda then leading that bunch. Esteban Ocon versus Valtteri Bottas. Bottas down the inside line. There at that corner, you've got to brave around the outside line, then down the inside line, gets the move done. Russell jumps Sainz in the pit stops. Now Carlos Sainz with DRS round the outside line into the chicane and gets the move comfortably done there to take P11. Some fantastic action here on lap number 19. We're going to see more of it. Alonso versus Schwartzman. Alonso P16 in the Alpine Latifi, and then Tsunoda in front. Now we've got Pierre Gasly and Valtteri Bottas down into turn one. Bottas around the outside line of the Frenchman. Gets the move done there. Meanwhile, further back, we could see some fireworks between Esteban Ocon at his home Grand Prix and Lando Norris at his home Grand Prix. Later on this lap now, down the back straight, we've got Norris versus Ocon, but Ocon defending fantastically well there. Keeps the position, but it does seem a bit of a poor exit there out of the chicane section now. Lando Norris can chase him all the way up this very, very faint hill, to say the least, down the inside line for Lando Norris and gets the move done. Alonso now in front of the Alfa Romeo of Yuki Tsunoda. Looking further up the field, Sergio Perez versus my teammate Charles Leclerc. This is for P2, my teammate on much fresher medium tyres. Gets the move done, and now a 1-2 in the order for us. I am currently staying out because pretty much all right. I think we'll go on to softs at the end to secure the fastest lap. Now then, Gasly versus Lando Norris. Norris got past Gasly's fellow countryman Esteban Ocon, and now Lando is searching for P7 down the inside line into the first corner. Great defending so far from Pierre Gasly, and he just about manages to keep the position, but it's going to be side by side as we head down into this lovely left-hander. He's about to keep the position, but now down the inside line for Lando Norris. Gets the move done up into P7. The question is, can Gasly and Ocon hold on from Ricciardo, Sainz and Russell to try and keep some points in this Grand Prix? But we are on lap number 22, and we are now going to enter the pits for a fresh set of soft tyres. Pretty much dominating the Grand Prix. The gap has stayed since Leclerc pitted around 28-29 seconds, so we've really been comfortable on these one mediums. But of course we're going to go on to some slightly used softs, and we are going to use them until the end of the Grand Prix, generally just to secure that fastest lap and ensure that we take that extra point and we're taking the maximum amount of points we can. And beating Charles Leclerc, we will be comfortably out in front of him, and then we should be able to extend the lead that we have. And it should be about 5 seconds ahead, if not more. And it is going to be, as we get the confirmation of it, about 6 seconds. Yeah, so pretty comfortable for ourselves. And yeah, these softs should be quite grippy. And yeah, you can feel the grip already in these softs. We're going to be setting some very strong lap times. So is Daniel Ricciardo, once he's managed to clear Ocon and Gasly, and he's done the move on Esteban Ocon, and now Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari is going to try and follow through, having a little look as we head onwards. Not getting the move done there, but now both Ferraris trying to come past Esteban Ocon. Sainz comfortably through, and so is his teammate George Russell in P11. Ocon now out of the points at his home Grand Prix. Gasly's still in the points, but he could lose that if both Ferraris come through. Carlos Sainz, though, looking for a couple of points in this Grand Prix by taking P9 down the inside line into the first corner. It's side by side, but the inside line now for Pierre Gasly, trying to hold on to the position. The battling and jockeying continues, and Pierre Gasly stays in front. Fantastic defending, but now with more DRS for Carlos Sainz, he's going to glide around the outside line into the braking zone. That was pretty comfortable for him there. Nothing Gasly could have done to try and defend, but now Russell is going to be thinking about a move onto lap number 26. And now we are about to begin the penultimate lap. George Russell on the back of Pierre Gasly, almost checking out his gearbox there as they headed through the final couple of corners. But now George Russell down into turn 1. We've seen it so many times, the battle through turn 1 and turn 2, and Russell comfortably through into P10, and now both Ferraris in the points, and 2 by 2 for the whole of the top 10. And now we are right at the end of this Grand Prix. On to the last lap we head. And what a Grand Prix it has been for ourselves. We've extended the gap to Charles Leclerc as Zhou really getting in the way there. That could be a bit costly in terms of our sector 1. But of course, it's been a pretty comfortable Grand Prix for ourselves. Since we pitted onto these softs, we've extended the gap to 11 seconds back to my teammate. But of course, we had the fights in the first stint, and then in the second stint, we were pretty dominant. And then in the third stint, really just decided to pit to use a set of softs to get in an even faster lap, which is currently is 1 minute 29.007. Schumacher and Giovinazzi are both kind of let us through, but what a Grand Prix it has been. Action-packed, non-stop, as you'd expect around here at France when you've got the split 2-stop and the 1-stop strategy. Bit of a shame that neither of the Frenchmen are going to take points here today. We are certainly, though, going to be taking a win, and 5/10 up on our previously best lap already here on the final lap. We just need to nicely hook up the end of the lap as we run a little bit wide there. That's not going to help too much. Got to get it nicely turned in, and it's a little bit messy, but we are still going to take what will be our third French GP victory. We've had 3 seasons, and we are going to win 3 times, our second win of the season, and what has been really quite a fantastic one. Yes, we win here in France.
We've witnessed some great battles around Paul Ricard today, and they've taken a fantastic win. Anthony, tell me, what was it that helped them achieve this success?
Well, this was a real team victory. They put together a solid strategy today that appeared well suited to the conditions out on track. The driver did everything that was expected of them in the moment to really execute the team's plan to perfection. A shining example of how F1 really is a team sport.
Well, what a thrilling end to an incredible Grand Prix weekend. Our top 3 finishers should be incredibly happy with what they were able to achieve out there today.
Well, another simply fantastic French Grand Prix and another fantastic victory for ourselves with the fastest lap of 1 minute 29.007. All 26 points taken from this GP, and what was quite a dominant victory from Charles Leclerc, who finished P2, my teammate, of course, 12 seconds behind, and another solid 18 points on the board for him, but just didn't really have the race pace that we had today. Sergio Perez, though, taking a podium from 11th on the grid, really executing that one-stop strategy to perfection and taking 15 points in the end in that Red Bull. What a great drive from him. His teammate Max Verstappen, a pretty decent race for him on that 2-stop strategy. Kind of the best of the rest if we exclude Checo and me and my teammate. Solid 12 points. He'll be happy with that, but will drop below us in the drivers' standings. Of course, after round number 4. Then Mercedes P5 and P6, Hamilton in front of Valtteri Bottas. Hamilton with a solid result there, taking 10 points. It was a decent Grand Prix for him. Didn't quite have the pace, though, of Verstappen, who finished in front in the Red Bull. But, of course, Valtteri Bottas was P6 behind him. And the two had very similar race pace, but Bottas really struggled a lot more from traffic and slower cars on the one-stop strategy. That really cost him. Finishes with 8 points. Then McLaren, P7 and P8, Lando Norris takes P7 with 6 points. Really solid drive from him out there today and showed some really great pace, finishing just behind Valtteri Bottas. Certainly the best of the bunch with the McLarens and the Ferrari. Daniel Ricciardo, solid result for him to take McLaren 4 points home, and of course 6 with Lando means they take 10 from this weekend. Great result for those guys. Ferrari, though, a bit of a shame for those two. Carlos Sainz P9 and George Russell P10. They really did struggle with traffic and didn't quite have the pace of McLaren today. As a result, those two finish at the bottom of the points, but at least it's still some points for them, and they've salvaged 3 in total. Big losses to McLaren this weekend, though. Of course, George Russell in his Ferrari continues his point scoring streak. Pierre Gasly doesn't do that, though. Sadly for him, just missing out on points by 2 seconds. Had the racer finished a couple of laps earlier, it could have been for him. And of course, his fellow countryman Esteban Ocon also missed out on points, finishing P12. But great one-stop strategies from those two. Fernando Alonso, P13. That's a pretty solid result considering he was on that 2-stop strategy. Bit frustrating to say he started in the top 10 and finished P13, but still decent pace from him out there today. P14 was Lance Stroll in the AlphaTauri. A decent result from him out there. Nothing too special, quite a bit behind his teammate, but solid drive. Similarly so for Yuki Tsunoda, who finished P15. He was leading the next sort of train of cars in that Alfa Romeo, ahead of a strong result for Nicholas Latifi, P16, in that improving Williams. He'll be certainly happy with that today, fighting with some other drivers, of course, the likes of Schwartzman and Tsunoda throughout the race, which you, of course, love to see. Robert Schwartzman failed to make a lot of progress, to say the least. He finished P17 after starting there in the Aston Martin. Pretty mediocre race for him down there in P17, the only Aston Martin to finish the Grand Prix. Then, of course, we move on to those who did get lapped, starting with Mick Schumacher. 18th place, though, for him. Still a very respectable result in that poor Haas, ahead of Antonio Giovinazzi in the Williams, who also finished holding that behind myself. Bit disappointing for Antonio there. Couldn't really make much progress. Still, though, some decent pace shown from him. Guan Yu Zhou struggled once again, finishing just P20. One race to forget for him. And also for Nikita Mazepin, who finished last of the runners. Matsushita did not finish thanks to a mechanical failure. In terms of the driver standings, Charles Leclerc still leads me by a comfortable margin, but it is only 23 points the gap now. We have really closed in enough to be able to win a race and him not finish, and then us now be in the lead of the championship. We have 64 points. Max Verstappen drops down to P3 in the Red Bull. He's 7 points behind ourselves, ahead of Sergio Perez, who closes in on him. The battle for P5 is now led by Lando Norris, who moves 4 points ahead of Russell, who has 26 points. Then Valtteri Bottas moves up to P7. His teammate Hamilton moves up to P9. Mercedes resurgence slowly continuing. Pierre Gasly in between the duo with just 22 points after failing to score for the first time this season. Ricciardo rounds out the top 10. He has 14 points, just 3 behind Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes. And it's Carlos Sainz 2 points behind Ricciardo in P11. Stroll in P12 with 8 points. And then Fernando Alonso in P13 with 2 points. Everyone else, including Esteban Ocon, still yet to score so far this season. But really starting to get a bit closer at the top. And then, of course, the midfield fight from 5th all the way down to P10 is extremely close, separated by just 16 points at the moment. Mercedes slowly making their way up that order, and that is quite visible, of course, in the constructor standings, but we still comfortably lead it, and in fact the gap now 50 points back to Red Bull. McLaren are P3 ahead of Mercedes, those two separated by 2 points in the battle for third as Mercedes fight their way back up the order. Ferrari and AlphaTauri both dropped down. Ferrari now 5th ahead of AlphaTauri in 6th. Ferrari 4 points behind Mercedes. Alpine with 2 points down there in 7th. So what an interesting GP weekend this has been. If you guys have enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. But of course, I'll see you sometime soon when we will move on to what I do believe will be the Austrian Grand Prix.